I was the seventh person to disappear from Sandy Creek Road, but I'm the first to remember what happened. The town of Harlow, Virginia, doesn't have a police department. Anymore, they contract with the county sheriff now, but back when they did, back before the disappearances started piling up like leaves. In a rain gutter, they used a squat brick building on Main Street that smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. I know that smell. I used to work there. My name is David Morrow, and until 3 years ago I was a detective with the Harlow Police Department. It was a quiet job, teenagers stealing road signs, domestic disputes that never went anywhere, a lot of deer hit by cars, the kind of place where the most exciting thing that happens all year is when the 4-H fair comes through. Then Kelly N.G. went missing. She was 23, a graduate student at the University of Richmond studying environmental science. She'd come back to Harlow for the weekend to help her mother clean out a garage. On a Sunday afternoon, she said she was going for a walk along Sandy Creek Road. It was a route she'd walked 100 times. She knew every bend, every patch of poison ivy, every spot where the water ran fast enough to wade in. She never came home. We searched for 3 weeks. I led the investigation. We had nothing, no witnesses, no video footage, no signs of a struggle. She left her phone at home, said she wanted to be present, to hear the birds. She told her mother, so we didn't even have a pings, just a road that curved through trees for 3 miles, and the sound of the creek that ran beside it. I remember standing at the edge of that road in late October, the leaves wet and brown under my boots, and feeling like the woods were watching. It wasn't a rational thought. It was the kind of feeling you get when you're alone in a dark house and you can't shake the sense that something just moved in the next room. I dismissed it. I was tired. I was frustrated. The case was going cold. 6 months later, Marcus Green disappeared. He was 41. He worked at the sawmill outside town, second shift. On a Tuesday night, he clocked out at 11, got in his truck, and was never seen again. His truck was found the next morning, parked on Sandy Creek Road, driver's side door open, engine cold. Half-empty thermos of coffee sitting on the passenger seat. No sign of Marcus, no blood, no footprints except his own, leading from the truck about 10 yards into the tree line and then stopping, just stopping, as though he'd been plucked off the earth by something with enormous hands. After Marcus, it was Amber Delgado. She was 17. She was out with friends, and they dared her to walk the length of Sandy Creek Road after midnight. She was the one who made the dare. She was the one who was fearless. Her friends waited at the other end for 2 hours before calling their parents. Amber's phone was found in the grass near the creek. The screen was cracked but still glowing, open to the last photo she'd taken. It was a picture of the road ahead, the trees on either side forming a dark tunnel, and at the far end, just barely visible, a shape, not a person, not an animal, something gray and indistinct, like a column of smoke that had forgotten to disperse. I looked at that photo for a long time. I zoomed in, I enhanced it, I sent it to a forensic imaging lab in Richmond. They couldn't tell me what it was either. They said it was probably a lens flare or moisture on the lens or a trick of the light. They said these things happen with night photography, but I knew the kid who took that photo. Amber was a good photographer. She knew her equipment. She wouldn't have called it a trick of the light. She'd have called it what it was. After Amber, the town started to fracture. People stopped going out at night. The county sheriff took over the investigation and brought consultants from the FBI. They dug up the road, sifted the creek sediment, brought in ground-penetrating radar and search dogs with cold case certifications. They found nothing, no tunnels, no hidden rooms, no bodies, nothing. The official theory was a serial predator, someone who knew the area well, someone who used the road as a hunting ground. It made sense. It was the only explanation that fit the evidence. But the evidence didn't fit anything, not really. By the time the sixth person disappeared, a retired schoolteacher, named Harriet Cross, who went out to look for her missing cat, I'd already handed in my badge. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit across from another family and tell them we were doing everything we could when I knew that we were missing something. Not because we weren't looking hard enough, but because we were looking for the wrong kind of answer. The disappearances eventually stopped, or rather, people stopped talking about them. The road was still there. People still drove it. During the day, they just didn't walk it anymore. They didn't stop, and they definitely didn't look too hard at the trees. 3 weeks ago, I went back. I don't know why. I'd been having dreams, not nightmares. Exactly, just the same dream every night, where I was walking down Sandy Creek Road in the dark, and I could hear the creek running, and I could hear something else, something beneath the water like stones being rubbed together slowly. I'd wake up with my hands clenched, my jaw sore from grinding my teeth. My wife told me I was talking in my sleep. She said I kept saying the same thing over and over. Don't look back, so I went. It was a Thursday afternoon, gray and damp, the kind of day that never fully becomes light. I parked my car at the south end of the road where the pavement gives way to gravel. I brought a flashlight even though I didn't plan to stay past sunset. I brought a recorder too, an old digital voice recorder I'd kept from my detective days. I told myself it was for notes, but I think I knew even then that I wasn't going to be taking notes with my hands. The first mile was nothing. Old trees, bare branches, the sound of water. The creek was running high from recent rain, swollen and brown at the edges. I walked slowly, trying to feel what they must have felt, trying to find the moment where the ordinary became the impossible. I reached the spot where Marcus Green's footprints had stopped. I stopped there too. I turned in a slow circle, looking at the trees, the underbrush, the sky. It was quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind where you realize the birds have stopped singing. I turned on the recorder and said, Detective David Morrow, Sandy Creek Road, marker 6, Thursday, March 14th, 2:47 p.m., no unusual observations. I stood there for another minute. Nothing happened. I felt foolish. I almost turned back, but then I heard it, not the creek, something under the creek, a low grinding sound like old bones shifting against each other. It came from downstream, where the road curved out of sight. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like something large was turning over in its sleep. I started walking toward the sound. My heart was pounding, but I kept moving. I told myself it was a beaver dam, or a fallen tree, or someone doing construction work on a property I didn't know about. I kept thinking of rational explanations, the way a drowning person keeps reaching for air that isn't there. The sound grew louder as I rounded the bend, and then I saw it. The road ahead was wrong. It wasn't that something was blocking it. It was that the road itself had changed. The pavement was darker. The trees on either side were closer together. The creek had widened, become deeper, and the water was moving in a direction it shouldn't have been, not downstream toward the river, but upstream toward the north end of the road. I watched a dead branch drift past, carried against the current by something I couldn't see. I stopped walking. I didn't want to go further, but my legs kept moving. It wasn't a choice. It was a compulsion, like the urge to touch a hot stove just to see if it's really hot, or the way your eyes are drawn to the scene of an accident even when you know you should look away. I looked at my watch. It was 2:57 p.m. The sky above me was the color of bruises. I reached a spot where the road opened up into a small clearing. There was an old oak tree at the center, half dead, its branches reaching out like fingers, and at the base of the tree there was a hole. It wasn't a burrow. It was too large for that. Maybe 6 feet wide. Maybe more. The edges were smooth, as though the earth had been cut with a blade, and from inside the hole I could hear the grinding sound clearly. It was close now, so close I could feel it in my teeth. I didn't want to look. I knew with a certainty that settled into my bones like cold water that I was not supposed to see what was in that hole, that the people who had seen it were the people who had disappeared, that the only way to stay was to leave, to turn around, to never come back. But I had been looking for this for 3 years. I had been dreaming about it. I had been carrying it the way you carry a stone in your pocket, rubbing it smooth with your thumb until you forget it's there, until the weight of it becomes part of you. I stepped closer. The grinding stopped, and from the hole something spoke, not in words, not in sound at all. It spoke in the space between my thoughts, in the silence behind my own voice. It said, "You were supposed to be the seventh." I didn't run. I couldn't. I stood there frozen, staring into the black mouth of that hole, and I felt something reach up. Not a hand, not a limb, a pressure, a gravity. It wrapped around my ankles, my knees, my chest. It pulled me forward, 1 inch at a time, and the ground beneath me had become soft, damp, giving way like wet paper. I fell forward, and then I was inside the hole. It was not a burrow, it was not a cave, it was a throat, a long, narrow passage lined with roots and soil, and something else, something that felt like bone. I slid for what seemed like hours, tumbling through absolute darkness, the walls pressing against me from all sides. I could hear the stones grinding all around me now. A tremendous sound, like the earth itself was chewing. I don't know how I got out. I don't remember climbing. I only remember waking up on the bank of the creek, covered in mud, my flashlight dead, my recorder missing. The sky was dark, the trees were the same trees, the road was the same road, but I wasn't the same because I remembered. I remembered all of them, Kelly, Marcus, Amber, Harriet, the others. I remembered them because I could feel them. They were still in that hole, not dead, not alive, held in the space between, in the grinding dark, waiting to be counted. I was supposed to be the seventh, but I was the first to come back, and I know now that what lives under Sandy Creek Road does not hunt, it does not stalk, it waits, and it counts, and when it reaches a number it has determined, it will not need a road anymore. It will follow the roots, it will follow the water, it will follow the sound of your footsteps on pavement, and it will find you no matter where you think you are safe. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. If you ever drive down a road and the trees seem closer than they should be, if the sound of the creek sounds like something breathing, if you ever feel a weight settle on your chest and a voice in your skull that says you were supposed to be the seventh, don't stop, don't look back, and whatever you do, don't count